when I was speaking to both Joe and Jeff, I informed about how many questions I was receiving concerning this 2020 CARES Act, concerning questions about the legality of it. What does it really mean? Who qualifies for it? And instead of guessing and trying to figure it out, I called up both Joe and Jeff, and they graciously accepted. And they're here just to help, particularly small business owners. It's important that, we're hoping that we can do this, at another time. But, today's informational question answer are targeted for small business owners, what's out there, what they're able to do, how to handle payrolls. That being said, it's a privilege to introduce my friend, Joseph Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me today. It's an honor and a privilege to help you inform our community about these SBA programs that are out there. Recently, the news has been reporting a lot of information up to recently where funding has even ran out, but our government is looking for more funding. So this is a perfect time to prepare those small business owners that are not sure if they qualify for these loans and these programs, what's forgivable, what has to be repaid, what the funds need to be used for. There's a lot of information, a lot of gray areas, and I am honored to be joined by you and Jeff today so I can help shed some light on this today.
Thank you, Joseph. Jeff?
Hi, Mike. Thank you so much for having us here today. Joe, good to see you again this morning. And good morning to everybody here in Yonkers. It's our pleasure, Joe and I and Mike, to try to help each and every one of you qualify for as much federal assistance as you possibly can. As Joe mentioned a little bit earlier, there's been a lot of press this week that one of these leading programs may have run out of money. Do not let that deter you at all. There are pending proposals in Congress. The Democrats are talking about adding an additional $250 billion. The Republicans are talking about adding $200 billion. And the Federal Reserve, which is like a big bank, has bought up at least $200 billion of the loans that have already been approved, meaning that they basically put that much more money back into the program. So we expect that by next week, there should be more money for these programs. I don't know, Joe, you want to say anything before I jump into the exciting programs, or I'll turn it over to you for a second.
Thanks, Jeff. I think that today we should definitely let our audience know we're going to focus on the CARE Act is huge, and in record timing it was passed, and I think that we should use our time today to really focus on the economic injury disaster loan and the Paycheck Protection Program, also known as the PPP loan. I think a lot of my personal clients have been calling and asking, well, what do I do both? Do I do one? What works out for me? What's more beneficial? And I think that definitely today, I always tell my clients, consult with your bankers, consult with your attorneys, not just with one person, get informed. And I think it's great that we can come together and I can give you this, I can be side by side with you today so we can discuss the legal ramifications of these loans, as well as what book accounting and bookkeeping wise, how prepared you need to be, how in compliance you need to be in order to qualify for these loans. So I think I'm even interested to hear what you have to say about the actual details and specifics of the Paycheck Protection Program.
Okay, thank you guys. Jeff, before we speak, and I know that there are people listening in, I've received, and this is going to cover a lot of businesses. I received emails from, people that own a hairstyle business on Central Avenue. I've received conversations from bakeries in Getty Square and restaurants on South Broadway, laundromats on Park Hill. Some of them have $11.99. Some of them are W-2. Some employees work on tips. So in the most basic way, is every type of business covered under this? And if you could comment on that in respect to how does a business owner, how can we give business owners some type of assurances that, there is help out there?
Okay, Mike. Well, the answer is yes to most of your questions. Most every business should qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program. There are some very limited exceptions, but let me see if I can pull up on my share screen some information about this, because I think it would make the presentation a little bit easier to follow. I don't know if people can see this, but Paycheck Protection Program, and I'm going to go through it with Joe, how to get into it. Almost 20% of your annual expenses could be covered under this program. And if you get the money and you spend it for approved purposes, it's forgiven, meaning you don't have to pay it back. If you spend it on something that's not an approved area, and Joe and I will go through that, it's a 1% loan due in 2 years. So everybody should be applying for this. Joe's going to talk a little bit about these economic injury disaster loans. Those can be much larger. You can get other funds if you don't qualify for the paycheck. There also is this emergency economic injury grant, which is $10,000, and they're claiming they'll be able to give it to you within 3 days. If you're not an employer, but you're an employee, there's a whole bunch of new things for unemployment. We're not really going to focus on that today, but I just want to point out that the New York State Bar Association has, at the governor's request, just opened up a very expansive pro bono project to help people apply for unemployment. And then there's a bunch of tax credits, and some of these might be useful for larger businesses because, for example, the employer pays FICA tax, 6.5% of the wages of an employee. I have one client who has over 1,000 employees who would not qualify for the first program, but under this tax credit or these delayed tax payments, they're actually forgiven to pay $3 million in FICA taxes for basically 2 years, and it's a little like 3.5% interest. So that's a very easy way for them to get money. But in terms of everyone listening to this program, this Paycheck Protection Loan, okay, goes to small businesses, right? It goes to individuals, okay? It goes to what we call the gig economy, which means, if you're an Uber driver or a very small business person, you can apply for this. If you're an individual, you can apply for it. If you're a not-for-profit entity, they even include churches if you're incorporated as a 501c3. And veterans organizations, you're all eligible for this. So all the examples that Mike gave of those different types of businesses, hairdressers, et cetera, you would be eligible for this program. You have to, however, be in business on February 15th, 2020 to qualify. And the money that you get is supposed to be spent between the time that you get the loan and June 30th in order to be part of this program. So I don't want to hog the whole thing. Joe, do you want to say something about that?
Yes. So under the PPP loan, I do want to point out that in order for these funds to be forgiven before the 2-year span where they're up, borrowers need to really use the funds appropriately, and the application process is actually very it's not as complicated as many people think. It's more about compliance and having the proper documentation in order to qualify for them. Definitely, I want to point out, because I get those same questions from my my independent contractors or my consultants that probably don't have an actual large payroll, and they're still eligible to receive these funds. To figure out how much of it is going to be forgiven is going to be, that's a different question, a different answer. But you can't beat a 1% interest rate. So it's definitely something that we should all definitely encourage small businesses to apply for.
Thank you, Joe. I do see that we have some people listening, and I appreciate that. And I got some questions. For example, Jeff, I know you said that, but I see Freddie Vasquez is listening, and he's a small business owner. And he states that the funds have run out and they're no longer accepting applications. And Jeff, correct me, that is factually correct, but I believe you just mentioned it, and it's been mentioned on the news that that money is going to be replenished, hopefully by early next week, between 250 million.
Yeah, Mike, that's what we anticipate. And I would say to this gentleman that's calling in with this question, if you have the application form, which you can get online and download, okay, fill it out, okay, and be ready to submit it as soon as they open the door again. Because what happened last time, it was basically a rush, and the first people that got in got money or got approved, and then they exhausted the initial funds that were in there. Since then, they're going to bring back more money. That's what everyone is telling us. And you'll see, Freddie, when we go into the form, it's a very short form. And it should be, an hour or less of anyone's time to kind of fill it out. And it's certainly worth it considering the benefits that you could get for it. Because here I've got the basic qualifications here, right? You take your payroll costs, say for the year, and then you divide them by 12, so you know what they are on a monthly basis, okay? And then you take 2 months of that and you multiply it by 2.5. So that comes up with a number. You could, have a payroll of say $10,000 a month, or $5,000 a month, or $1,000 a month. Let's say it's $5,000 a month. You would then take 2 months, which is 10, and you'd multiply that by 2.5. And this is where the accountant has to come in because I'm just a lawyer, but it's $25,000, I think. And you would apply for that amount and you would get that check. You wouldn't have to pay the money back for 2 years, okay? There's no payments due during the first 6 months. The interest rate on it is 1%. But if you spend it for payroll or rent or business-related loans, it's forgivable, meaning you don't owe anything.
And Jeff, I appreciate that. So just to be clear, paying rent, paying utilities, paying salaries, buying ink and operations. So it's pretty, from my understanding, it's pretty broad based. Anything to keep your business up and running. Is that a fair statement, Jeff, from what you see from the CARE Act?
I don't know if it would cover all of your office supplies and equipment, Mike, but it would cover all your payroll.
Okay, payroll. So this is clearly to keep people working.
Right. And it would cover rent. If you own the building that you're in and you're paying a mortgage, it would cover your payments during that time period. It would also cover your utilities. So gas, electric, telephone, internet. These are all eligible expenses. So, I actually pulled up here on the screen the application form, and later on I have slides here that go through, what can be forgiven. But, unless you or Joe want to jump in something else, or you have another question, it might be interesting to just kind of quickly walk through this application form so people can see what I think is a pretty simple form.
Okay. Jeff, I have another question, and this is from Jay. Jay, how are you? A lot of businesses, and you make a good point, where some businesses are owner occupied, but we have many businesses that are tenants. We have commercial tenants and rental tenants. I do believe that the Governor Cuomo issued an executive order early on about a 90-day stay for evictions. Is there any relief or what should a commercial tenant be doing now besides applying for their programs? Is there any guidance that you would recommend for any business owner that doesn't own their property, what they should be doing and talking to their landlord? Or should they wait to the 90 days? Should they be doing something now? What type of guidance can you give business owners?
Well, one of the things that I've seen so far is a real community spirit among the majority of um, owners and tenants that we've had to deal with. And in my law firm, I have 26 lawyers right here in Yonkers, and we have a lot of clients involved in real estate, either as tenants or as owners. Um, and it's been a real pleasant surprise to see the way people are working together to try to get through this crisis, because we all realize that um, every one of us is dependent on the other to get through this. So I would say, if you are closed or suffering or not sure how you're going to be able to pay your rent, I would get on the phone with your landlady or your landlord and start the discussion to see what you could work out.
Thank you. Joseph, I have a question. Many times, business owners, when it comes to, again, the PPP is really to protect employees. Um, what would you recommend for business owners that use different types of payroll methods? For example, most get a W-2 at the end of the year, and I believe that's a common way. They get their, I think the deadline is sometime in late January, they get their W-2. However, you sometimes get 1099s, the independent contractors, or you have the, or wait staff, for example, that work on tips. How, so again, dealing with our business, how would they prepare for that? What documents do they need when they do finally get, the website up and running? So what type of guidance can you give for business owners and their employees that are not the traditional W-2 employees?
That's a great question, Mike. What a lot of people haven't realized is that a 1099 independent contractor, someone that you do not have on a payroll, is not considered an employee for the PPP loan. So, and the reason behind it is because these independent contractors are actually eligible for their own disaster relief loan programs. So if I have an employee and I'm applying for a SBA disaster relief loan, and I want to get the grant for that's up to $10,000, that grant is actually going to be advanced by $1,000 per employee I have on the books through payroll. So if I have an independent contractor, someone that works on commissions, that works for my firm, or that is not on payroll, that individual can apply for their own PPP loan. They can apply for their own disaster relief loan. Therefore, the actual employer, the actual business owner, cannot count that contractor as part of the program application. So a lot of it, it's going to go down to documentation. How have you documented that you paid these people? You know what I mean? For loan document submission for these loans, they ask you, if you are a cash-based business or a tip-based business and your employees receive tips, they want records of that. They want you to submit, yeah, the payroll was X amount of dollars and the tips was an X amount of dollars. So that way they can qualify you appropriately. You're not mute. You're unmute yourself.
You're muted, Mike.
Okay, there we go. All right. I should, I'm usually muted, so I forgot to unmute. What I was saying, Joseph, thank you for that answer. So is it safe to say, notwithstanding there's all these programs out there and they're either going to turn into grants, business owners need to have good record keeping to justify who's an employee and justifying their salaries. Now, and the flip side is, if somebody wasn't having accurate payrolls, cash pay, or not recording all of it, pretty much, is there any recourse? Is there any other opportunities out there, or they could only go on what's on paper?
As of right now, we can only go with what's on paper. This is, again, when in crisis, you don't think about things like this. Record keeping, documentation, putting people properly on payroll. These are all things that as business owners, it's our responsibilities to do. Sometimes they fall through the cracks, and it's times like this where we are kicking ourselves and saying, wow, I should have had my payroll done properly. I should have had proper documentation and records, because now when I need a loan, the loan, the PPP loan is going off of how much the payroll is for 2 months plus a 25% on top of it to cover rent and utilities. So if I have proper documentation that show that my average 2-month payroll is $100,000, I'm going to receive my loan for $125,000. And if that wasn't properly documented, then I would not be able to get that amount. And then essentially I would get that amount forgiven. So a lot of the times is, in IRS world, we always talk about reconstructing of records and making sure that we can legitimize every expense that our business owners do take on. There is, the saying goes, you got to spend money to make money, and that's never been more true at a time like this. So definitely, working with an accountant is going to be beneficial for when you're reconstructing for stuff like this. It's unfortunate timing, but the reality is that you need documentation to prove your actual expenditures. And if you're a cash-based business, it's going to be a little bit difficult.
Okay, understand that. And thanks for that explanation, Joe. What I wanted to ask was, and let me just read this question. Okay, what about, and this circles back to what it could be used for. Let's just say you have certain businesses that have inventory that expires. Obviously, if you have a paintbrush, that doesn't expire, but particularly anything that has a limited shelf life. The stores, or anything that pretty much expires. Does the PPP, can that be used? I know most is payroll, but what about inventory that's expired because of this?
From my knowledge, the PPP cannot be used for inventory. The economic injury disaster loan can. So that's where we have to dabble into the two different loans. And I know right now we're focusing on the PPP, but especially the grant, which is the forgivable portion, that actually expands into inventory and marketing cost. So there are options for business owners that have inventory that they would like to get forgiven because it's losses. I mean, again, during this time, we cannot forget to continue to keep. It's hard to keep a clear head right now, but business owners, you must keep doing your due diligence. You must keep doing your jobs and document if you lost inventory, if you're spending money. And right now it's a little one of those things where we're all waking up not knowing what day of the week it is. So it's important to continue to track these things, because rest assured, the CARE Act came out so fast. I cannot wait to listen and read all the text this winter when we're getting ready for the 2020 tax season, because it's going to be a lot more exclusions, a lot more things that we lost can come back. A lot of new laws is going to be rewritten, and the IRS is going to rewrite their instructions for us accountants. So it's definitely going to be a time that we will definitely need to make sure that we are documenting everything that we're losing during this time.
All right. It's funny, you just mentioned that we got Freddie Vasquez, who I actually met, and he's a small business owner, and he goes, the government frowns upon cash business. Absolutely, because they want to know what everyone is making, and it's in the bank account. Freddie, you're spot on. Going across, let's see what else we have here. We have a lot of comments, and I'm trying to. Jeff, what the question now, and I see, for example, the Small Business Administration, they got this $10,000, immediate grant. So how does somebody just start? Where do they go? Like, what is the process? I'm a small business. Hey, they're giving this money out. What website do they go to? Do they go to the bank where they bank at? Do they go to a government website? How do you guide somebody to start the process?
I would go to the SBA website, Mike, and they have, all these application forms there. And then you may need to consult with an accountant that you use for your business to help you fill out some of the things. The economic disaster loans are a little bit different. And like Joe said earlier, they could be utilized for other business losses or business expenses, including perishable goods and inventory, office supplies, those types of issues. So that's the way I would go about that one.
Okay, thanks. And then that was cited, I believe it's called SBA.gov,
Correct.
Small Business Administration.gov. And what are the basic documents you need? Obviously, your name, your federal tax ID number, perhaps your social security number. What other documents should applicants have prior to applying?
Well, Mike, that depends on which program you're applying for. And if I can try to put this back up on the screen again with the,
Sure.
let's see if this comes up. I hope everybody can see it. This is the Paycheck application form, okay? And it is very simple. In the beginning, you check what kind of business you are. You put down your business legal name and your address, and then you add your tax identification number and a contact phone number. You then fill in your average payroll and your number of employees, and you can check these boxes of what the loan is for: payroll, lease, mortgage interest, utilities. And that's basically it. They will ask you, the banks that are processing these loans will ask you for some documentation, which would be your 941, which is tax form, or similar documents that your accountant should have if you have payroll. And then they have a series of questions that are right here, and they're pretty straightforward, but they don't require documents to answer these questions generally. As the applicant debarred, meaning you've applied for a federal program of some kind and you've been declared ineligible because of something, for example, fraud. If you check yes, you're probably not going to get a loan, but if you check no, you're moving right along. And here's another question: have you ever defaulted on a previous SBA loan? And you'll see one or two basic questions. Have you received an economic injury disaster loan? Question number 4. Okay, and there you have to fill out another sheet. For this, I would consult with Joe or somebody to help you get the answer correct. But the concept here is to ensure that you don't duplicate the loans, that you don't get a loan and a grant for the same thing. But if you work them together, so one is covering payroll and rent, and the other is covering inventory and other types of expenses, you could do very well.
Jeff, thanks for that. I have another follow-up question about pretty much there's insurance for everything in the world. This coronavirus epidemic wasn't foreseen, and I said last week. Actually, I said it last week on Yonkers Voice. There'll be lessons learned from this, and I generally believe as a country we're going to come out stronger and better. But generally speaking, is there any type of, you would call this like a business interruption because of a natural disaster? Is there going forward, do you think, a type of insurance that will be available as an option for business owners?
I'm sure some insurance company will see an opportunity to make a profit or make some money, and they may try to expand the types of products they have. Right now, there is a lot of uncertainty about whether or not any insurance policies cover it. So you have to really look at your own. You mentioned business interruption insurance, and there have been claims filed by a number of people seeking to recover, saying that their business was injured by this. And almost uniformly across every state, the insurance companies are opposing that on the grounds that you have to show a direct physical injury to some sort of property in order to qualify. And they're saying that this pandemic, this virus, does not, same thing as a tree falling on your house, a direct physical injury. But there are court cases challenging that, and I don't know how they'll turn out. So that's where things stand.
Great. And I would like to pose this question to both of you from a legal standpoint to Jeff and an accountant standpoint to Joe. Eventually, everyone's getting these direct deposits. Most everyone's getting these direct deposits, and everyone's using it for what you just said. Payroll and utilities. But where's the compliance aspect? One thing that I generally fear is that there's, with the anxiety and the uncertainty, people are going to check off every box and sign every signature that they need. What happens if this money isn't used for its purpose? So instead of paying, payroll, you use it to, expand your kitchen, or you use it to go get a lease on your car. It wasn't used for that purpose. Can you, from an accountant and legal standpoint, can you shed some light and why it's so important to use it the way it was intended to be given?
I hear silence, so I'll go first with the legal, and then we'll let Joe fill in the accounting. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's take the Paycheck Protection Program, right? It's a very simple form. It doesn't have a lot of documentation. You give it to the bank under the SBA guidance that they've given to the banks. They're entitled to rely on your certification that this is accurate and true. And the same thing holds for the forgiveness. If you submit the documentation to show that you spent it on payroll, you have to spend at least 75% of what you get on payroll, 75%. The other 25% you can spend on rent and utilities. If you submit that documentation, they're going to take your word for it in most cases. And if you're continuing in business and you have these expenses, you should do that. The problem will come about when you spend it on something else. And then you fall into one of two categories. Category number one is it's not forgiven, it's a loan, you have to pay it back. Category number two, and they do mention this, is that they could consider it to be fraud. And there's a federal statute, Title 18 USC 1001, which says that if you submit a false affidavit to obtain any federal benefit, it's a crime. So somebody is probably going to get prosecuted under that eventually. And I wouldn't really advise people to do that. It's like, why steal a gift, right? You're getting this. If you're in business, you qualify for this. Just be straight up with it, and it'll help you keep your employees. And don't commit fraud in this program, because somebody's going to be made an example. Joe?
Thank you, Jeff. Joe, what would you recommend to people receiving any funds for any program? That way, they dot their I's, cross their T's. Eventually, when Big Brother comes, what would you recommend?
A lot of the conversations with my clients have always started with, if you get audited. And something with the SBA is really telling me, my gut is saying that, this forgiveness program is not going to be something that's just going to be, submit your some photocopies. It's going to be an internal audit. It's going to be a compliance audit. It's going to be a third party, be it SBA, be it a third party CPA, be it the IRS, saying, hey, let's check the accuracy of this company's financials. Let's check the accuracy of these tax returns. Let's see where the funds went. And one of the biggest things that people don't understand is that when you have a business bank account, forget loans, forget grants, when you have a business bank account, as a corporate officer of a corporation, as a member of an LLC, you are not supposed to misuse business funds for personal reasons. So this is just going to add on to existing laws, existing IRS legislation that says that you're supposed to be using business funds for business purposes. So from the outside, we're being told, hey, if you don't use it for payroll, if you don't use it for rent, and if you don't use it for utilities, the worst that can happen is you're going to get a 1% interest rate, and you have to pay this money back within 2 years. Is there going to be a penalty for misusing funds? I definitely foresee that happening. There is no clear instruction on that. There's still no clear instruction on how the forgiveness program is going to work. But I definitely foresee our offices being, on the legal side and on the accounting side, be very busy, because we will have to be putting together these packages to make sure that our business owners are actually applying for the right forgiveness and for the right amount. Again, like I tried to mention earlier with a quick example, if we have if they lend you $100,000 because that's how much your payroll is within 2 months, if you get that buffer for rent and utilities of 25%, you know what I mean? For forgiveness purposes, they're going to go off of 2022 month actual. So they're going to look at 2 months and say, okay, what was your payroll expenses for those 2 months? Oh, it wasn't 100,000. It was only maybe 90,000. What was your actual rent and utilities for that month? How did you pay it? Where's the canceled check? Where's the wire transfer? Once they determine that amount, the balance will still be owed to that and will be subject to that 1%. It's an amazing program. It's an amazing opportunity, because to get rent and utilities and payroll covered for at least 2 months and get it forgiven, it's fantastic. And then you're not going to find a 1% interest rate anywhere right now. So it's definitely, if you use the other funds, it could have went towards rent too, because I'm going to get that question. Oh, but I paid all my rent. I literally only used it for rent. But the forgiveness program is going off of a 2-month calculation. I want everyone to understand that. It's not going off of, okay, if they lend you 50,000 and you can prove that the 50,000 went 100% towards payroll, that you're going to get 100% of it forgiven. It has to be within that 2-month period, because that's how the calculation is working. We have to be very cautious on how payroll is done for those 2 months that you're going to apply for forgiveness. It can't look like inflation. It can't look like you're purposely trying to pay employees more during that period to get 100% of the loan forgiven. It has to be done accurately.
And I know, Joe, that we're running out of time. So, and you made reference to some of your clients. Jeff, you made reference to some of your clients. If somebody wants to reach out to you, if they have some questions, Joe, what's the best way that they could reach out to you?
Currently, our Yonkers Avenue office is open and accepting drop-offs. Until after May 15th, we will be suspending any face-to-face appointments, but we are available over the phone, 914-513-3232. You can call and text us. We're available by email at tax@jsquaredoffice.com. We're here. We've been servicing the community for quite some time now, and we look forward to continue helping those in the time of need.
Thank you, Joe. And Jeff, you made reference to, you had some clients, small business and big business. Are you taking calls if anyone has questions with the legalities of everything? How somebody wants to reach out, what's the best way that they could get you?
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. We are working remotely, my entire law firm, and it's been very effective. We can be reached. You can call our general number, 914-476-0600, and it connects directly then through our switchboard to whatever attorney you're looking for, or you can reach us by email. My email is jbuss, B-U-S-S, at SBJ for Smith, Buss, Jacobs, sbjlaw.com. I give out my cell phone number to everybody. I don't mind doing it on Facebook either. It's on my business card, 917-847-1487.
Okay. All right. And I see that, Joe, we got your website is jssquaredoffice.com, and I do know that your office is active. It should be noted for people that were going in and out. There was a lot of questions, and I certainly, before I give the mic back to Rue, I'm hoping that we could do this again and perhaps on a different issue. I know that there's a lot of residents concerning now, rent, residential and commercial, unemployment issues. So perhaps, we could plan something again, and we could talk about another important and vital issue. Unfortunately, with pretty much an hour, and talking about the CARE Act, I think it's more, of course, if we have Ben's generosity and his ability, we could take something else again, and we'll see what people are concerned about, what people have questions about. Maybe we could take another time and discuss that. Ben, your camera's back on. I personally want to thank you again for allowing us to do this using your platform. Feel that your platform allows us to give us the largest reach in Yonkers and surrounding communities. Jeff and Joe, I want to thank you taking time out of your busy schedules. Pretty much everyone's working from home, but I could just tell from some of the comments here, that the information was important, it's relevant, and please, everyone, reach out to Joe and Jeff if you have any questions or need further guidance. That being said, I would like to give the mic back to the co-host for Yonkers Voice, Ben. Ben, thank you so much.
Well, thank you all. Thank you, Jeffrey Buss. Thank you, Joseph, for taking the time to step in and give the people of Yonkers and the people of our community information that of extremely value. Thank you, Council President, and you are welcome into my platform at any time you desire. Anytime you have information that is of value to the community, please step in. You can follow us on Yonkers Voice, yonkersvoice.com, and on our YouTube channel, also under the same name, Yonkers Voice. Thank you all. And this concludes our interview, our broadcast for today.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Joe, Jeff. God bless and stay safe.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Ben. Have a good, safe day, everyone. Thank you, Joe.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Guys,
be safe.
Owen, be safe.